Beyond the headlines. This is World Insight.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, our season of AI and basic sciences. As AI advances fast in a quick-shifting industry, open source models are gaining ground while different players are taking divergent paths. Yet beneath the surface, important questions remain. How should the governments approach regulation without stifling innovation? Can different regulatory frameworks find common ground? And what will it take to step up cooperation and AI governance among nations? On these, I asked the two young scholars in the front line of AI research to share their perspectives. In the headline news, you see the frontier models in the United States. Some of the prices actually are dropping even to free of charge. You also hear news coming from China. Some of the leading open source models, the price is going up a little bit when it comes to charge of fees for the customers. What is going on here, Rex?
I think it's a good thing to see that this is an active area that the people work on, and there is competition, and it's a market. People adjust prices by supply, demand, and other factors. Like a lot of models previously in the U.S. were kind of way too expensive. A million tokens cost like $50 in output, and it's just not sustainable and prevents people from trying out agents in a lot of real-world scenarios. And lowering price, for sure helps people with experimenting or applying agentic workflows to areas that they haven't explored yet. So I think it's generally good, and it's it's kind of like a market, right? It shows that these companies are competing with each other. They adjusting prices so that they remain competitive. Basically, people are looking at this chart, right? Like one axis is kind of the price, and the other axis is their performance. Then we'll find the Pareto frontier. I think that's generally the approach, and people are using cheaper and more expensive models for different purposes. So I think it's good to see this kind of dynamic.
Interesting, but on the other hand, we shouldn't ignore one fact that some of these large language model companies are going public. So is it really the latest news as a result of competition or as a result of hyping before IPOs?
That's such a great point. When we think a product is free, perhaps in that case, something is being used from us, the users, such as our data, or basically having people more familiar with these models. And when they have an IPO, it will be an easier process, perhaps, for them. And in addition to that, there are also advertisements being integrated into these models. So again, is it really free? What does free mean in this context? And exactly as Rex mentioned, depending on capabilities and performance, there are different options. So having options is useful, but being able to understand what exactly are the options, what are the trade-offs, and why is this happening might help people make more informed decisions about what kind of models they are using and why we are witnessing such differences in pricing.
Speaking of that, I heard, for example, the new Meta code agents model, they have a really cheap option, like, I don't know, a cent or something per million token, provided that you allow them to use your data for training, some kind of deal like this.
Right, but there's another question related to this because the open source and open weight, they earlier almost pretty much are free of charge. But the frontier models where we see mostly in the United States at this moment are relatively much more expensive than, let's just say, the open source and open weight models. How should we understand this debate about open weight, open source vis-a-vis closed source frontier models? And by the way, some of the earlier category are already as good, if not better now, than the latter category. Eileen?
I have 2 points about this. Open source, open weight is very valuable, especially for science, transparency, to understand ethical and safety implications, to be able to improve these models together. But at the same time, when it's open weight, and if we don't understand what the training data is, what does that exactly mean? How open source is that? Or do we need access to the entire training data set? When it's open source, can we analyze the training data set? That might not be feasible with the current methods that we have, especially when it comes to data analysis. And when we look at proprietary models, they have more post-training approaches, and we don't know what kind of scaffolding might be happening, leading to better performance. But at the same time, using these models, training them is very expensive. These things have environmental impact. They require lots of resources. So they are not free. If we have more understanding of both environmental impacts and their costs, I guess trade-offs can be better analyzed, but open source is always needed for science.
Very interesting. But on the other hand, the closed source, there are also safety issues that we don't know.
Yes.
As some of the information you just talked about open source, when it comes to closed source, we still do not know. That is the interesting part, isn't it? Yeah. Go to you, Rex, on that.
I believe that most people in academia would kind of support open source developments, right? And currently China is kind of leading in that aspect. And we do benefit a lot from this, right? Because like when people open source, we can inspect their architecture, we can inspect like weights and cache. So these things are very important for like explainability purposes, understanding the model behavior, and doing some adversarial testing for safety kind of thing. Like there are a lot of things we can do, and whereas in closed source model, it's really hard to do anything like other than just looking at tokens and doing prompts. So I'm kind of a believer that in the next few years, as the technology gets more mature and people know more about this field, and there will be more things that are open, right? Not only data, not only model, but also like the training processes, parameters. A lot of things will be kind of open, right? And I think this is a world where like everyone will benefit.
At this point, we see some very different approaches. Like Europe just put out the AI Act, a watered down version so far, but still quite controversy. Meanwhile, you also see China has been building the AI safety standards and rules and regulations over the past few years, starting from its own perspectives. And you also see the US doing a very different approach. Earlier, Democrat administration trying to suggest, this is what we need to do. But now with the Trump administration more closely working with the latest innovation, suggesting policies should support innovation rather than, bringing more regulations to innovation.
You categorized what is happening in the world broadly, quite accurately. There is the EU AI Act, and because of that, people get more information about what the models might be doing, what the limitations might be. Stakeholders get more information about this as well, and there are open policy discussions. And the directions were similar in the US, with caution to reduce harms of these systems to ensure benefits for all stakeholders across government, industry, and the public. And that conversation has changed to focus more on accelerated innovation with concerns that policy might hinder innovation. It is not clear whether safety and security considerations will actually reduce innovation. We don't have evidence about that. And accordingly, right now, due to lack of certain guardrails, we see the harms of AI manifesting across young teenagers, individuals, and so on, because certain moderations are not exactly taking place or they have not been standardized. But in the past, there was significant focus on having standards for potentially harmful uses of AI. So you mentioned that in China, there is more focus on safety. And we know that there are significant consequences, and these haven't happened with prior technologies, and we have to do something about these. And accordingly, at the state level, there has been progress in the US, but it's not very transparent. And again, it is not as standardized. So there are conflicts across these regions.
Right. So you have the national level that is more relaxed, so to speak, to encourage, as they say, innovation. At the local level, for example, at the state level, they have very different rules, and these are not correlating with one another. The business is confused. What shall I do on this state and in that state? And the public also, because everybody is traveling around. That's also interesting, isn't it? What about your EU approach?
The EU has had their policy approach for a few years now, but one disadvantage on their side seems to be they have this omnibus approach where they try to throw in one kind of a policy that might fit all kinds of problems, but we just discussed that. This is a general purpose technology that's being used for all kinds of things. So it might be useful in one context, but then when it's tried to be used with the same approach in a different context, it might become very harmful.
One size doesn't fit all.
And we don't understand these yet. So we need more information and transparency, collaboration across government, industry, and the public to understand how to improve these things. So
I hope that is really happening. But Rex, what about the three different approaches as you see it?
My opinion is government should come in when the industry and the consumer, or the market in general doesn't regulate itself, right, or doesn't fix the issue.
But the point is, can industry regulate themselves? Do you think they can, or they are willing to?
My opinion is that at the start, people will. Because they want to, have a good image. But then at this point, when it comes to like IPO, when it comes to, there are a lot of stakeholders, then they will prioritize that rather than safety.
Exactly.
That's what I thought. They will prioritize revenues and earnings at this stage. So I think, but then this is when I think governance should come in to say like there is a minimum standard that you have to meet before you
and these standards better be similar to one another. Otherwise, the business is going to be very confused.
Yeah, it's hard. Different states can have different regulations. My personal opinion is yes, because it reflects the needs of the people, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like different states have their different tax systems. That's fine. As long as the people there are happy, I think it's fine.
Is it over-regulation in the U.S. or less regulation than needed?
My opinion is in the U.S. currently, I think it's a little bit less regulated than ideal, especially related to data privacy and what kind of data is are considered to be like personal data, and whether you need like consent to consider this data for evaluation, for example, or for training, different kinds of things. I think it's a little bit under-regulated in the sense that the policy don't specify to that level. So there's a lot of leeway that the companies can, they can do various things, and their lawyers will say, it still satisfy the regulation.
That's really a great point, that the technologies are developing so fast. We know the AI capability is still accelerating at this moment when we're talking to one another. So can policies catch up with what's going on in technologies? And also, is it the right time to do policies as much as we can to the extent that they are relevant? What do you think, Eileen?
This is such a good and, again, complicated question. Before I start answering, I also want to note that industry might not have all the expertise to self-regulate because, for example, there are public policy experts who have been focusing on these types of things for a very long time, and industry has lots of tech workers that are really trying to do good things. Mm-hmm. But again, there's like this perhaps objective and expertise mismatch. We need a responsible design, development, and deployment process throughout the entire pipeline. Yes, the technology is developing. Overall, it has net positive benefits, but we need to do this in a responsible way by carefully analyzing every single step.
Rex?
Yeah, I think we will catch up, or I think the policy will catch up, unless we see a big surprise here. I don't know if that will happen, but so far, I think it's kind of predictable of like what people are doing and how the architecture evolves.
We can consider right now as, since it has advanced so much, many people in industry are deploying agents for all kinds of purposes in agentic ways, agents that use tools automatically. And then we have these disparate actors, different actors deploying their own agents to perform some kind of a task on the internet. It might be an individual one. We had this case with, for example, OpenAI and Hugging Face and security issues, and things got out of control. But then imagine having many agents, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands potentially, all interacting with each other with different goals and purposes. Things can get really complicated and sensitive and risky in such context. So before we get to that very chaotic stage, understanding why they are deployed, what can be done, what kind of guardrails we can have would be very important, because agents themselves have automatic collaboration versus competition
Right.
Approaches,
And there are a lot of things that we
strategies.
don't know what is
We
going on
don't know
among
what
the
they are
agents.
doing.
Sometimes they take shortcuts. Right?
Yes.
Well, it's only natural, right? But having said that, though, what would be the thing? Rex, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Would clarifying some of these directions help us to have the momentum of real updated regulations and rules?
It's quite necessary to define the boundary
Right.
Of what specific agents or what specific point, like component in the pipeline can get access to. There is like a specific, let's say, a hierarchy of access rules.
Having stakeholders involved, like such as participatory design, to understand their needs and like benefits, as you mentioned, what are the goals here, can outline policies much better. And then stakeholders can also help contribute to what the policies should be. So that would create a quite synergistic setting. It just requires perhaps a slightly different approach compared to how regulations and policies have been constructed in the past. More interactive approaches, more stakeholders involved so that we all understand.
That's going to be very messy, right? It's going to be very complicated when you have ever more stakeholders involved in the conversation. Okay, I guess we are reaching another stage of our conversation. At this moment, China and the United States are the biggest AI powerhouses in the world. There can be cooperation in governance, particularly on the security issues. So how do you see as academics this intertwined, complicated, and yet absolutely fascinating relationship between the two AI powerhouses?
There's great research coming about AI from all around the world. China and the US has very active research and developments in these areas. And we also have to recognize that people from all around the world use models that have been developed in China or in the US. And again, these are general purpose models, and they have risks and benefits for everyone involved, including the governments. And accordingly, being able to collaborate on these and understand both the risks and benefits together will lead to better cooperation. And in this case, cooperation will only benefit innovation as well, given that both countries are trying to advance AI and they are successful. And if they can agree on certain things, perhaps in policy circles or at higher levels, maybe we don't hear too much about collaboration, but among researchers and scientists, everyone is collaborating and people are working very well together in creative ways to understand this technology.
Yeah.
So that is quite promising.
Rex, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have the same feeling as you. Like at the higher level, at management level or policymaker, there is like a lot of tension and competition and discussion about being self-sufficient rather than relying on, right? There's always this thing, but like at the lower level, right? I think for general public, for academia people or even for industry, there is so much collaboration, and this is kind of essentially part of what everyone is doing. There's so much collaboration, and it's not just hardware. In the software, I think you see so many papers being co-authored by people from both sides.
Very interesting, because sometimes you see the rhetorics in the media. It's actually so different from the reality, what is going on there. Having said that, though, recently, the media has been hyping about distillation, so to speak. I would love to hear about your opinions on this. Is it more about the geopolitical competition, or this is more, like industry inside practices, or as a consumer, how shall I make my pick and choices? How does that work?
One thing to recognize here is that everyone is distilling public data. The training data comes from the entire internet. So it's not that one company is distilling another company's model. It's all the data that belongs to people. So what are the privacy and data regulations here? Unless they do something about their privacy decisions and policies, the data is being used for retraining and it leaks. So we are in this cycle where all the data in the world is being used to train these models.
My opinion is, the real scenario is companies will have this kind of policy, say like my company policy is, it's not a law, right? But like my company does not, want distillation to happen in my commercial agreement and so on. And maybe in the commercial case we should just respect it. It's not a good thing, right? Personally, I would say like a more open-mindedness is something good.
Some policymakers and the media tend to hype issues like this and tend to shape things only in the framework of China versus United States. Of course, it's so easy, it's so convenient. Would that delay our collective capabilities to get better, or will that speed up the innovation in different ecosystems? That's always, I'm curious about that. Yeah.
Such strict categorizations and binary perspectives create chilling effects, certainly among researchers and students, and that is not ideal because then researchers sometimes are afraid of working on these topics, and that does not make sense. We should be all working together, and such reductionist approaches that oversimplify things lead to polarization. So strategically, such chilling effects might benefit certain parties for certain purposes or objectives, agendas they might want to advance. But overall, it is not very clear if that is the most useful thing for the public and governments and innovation in general.
I see. Another question I would love to ask both of you is about the compute. We see horrendous amount of compute being stored up to have this linear development of AI capabilities, particularly in large language models and agentic uses these days. Rex, are we going to see the limit soon?
I think not yet, right?
Okay.
I think it's still growing at a quite fast speed.
Because the money is still there?
Money, but then also the demand from people, from company, right? I think everyone is just looking at these reports from the hyperscalers, right? So that's the most important signal. And what we see so far is that they are making revenue, and at the same time they're spending like I don't know, 200 billion.
Are we in the middle of this big bubble? Is the bubble likely to burst? So how do you see the other side of the story?
I think technology and bubble are always coexist.
Pretty much.
There will be people who are like hyped, right? They will overvalue certain things, right? So I think there will be, but the fact that people are talking about bubbles means people are still being wary, and I guess that's perhaps a good signal, right? Because that cools people down, and so rather than going like that, you're going like it's a much better way, right? So I welcome these kind of comments saying like some areas are maybe like overhyped, I don't know, right? And memory, I don't know, right? Some areas are and have a lot of potential. I think this kind of discussion is good, right? Because difference in opinion creates an efficient market.
There's so much going on related to the AI hype. As you discussed a bit, on the compute side, there's like so much focus on data centers, semiconductors, and chips, but these technologies are advancing rapidly. However, one thing to keep in mind is we also have quantum computing, and this might, in a few years, quantum computing might actually play a significant role in the context of AI. So that might change things in this AI hype and the bubble, perhaps the shape of the bubble and the location of the bubble a bit. But at the same time, when we are talking about this bubble, yes, there are market effects, but there's also job displacement. And there we have unanswered questions. Is it going to lead to something better than what humans are capable of doing? At least focusing more on human AI collaborative approaches might be a smarter way to do things as opposed to directly laying off people. But again, with the advancements, plus there's more focus on different types of architectures that don't resemble the current language models.
On the improving of efficiency, I would like to go to you, Rex. What have been done? Are there already very promising areas that you have seen maturely taking place right now? Is that the direction?
Yeah, I think the efficiency is getting improved in at different levels of the model training hierarchy. We have people working on like efficiency in like chip making, introducing AI to making more efficiently developed chips, right? And then we see people making very efficient kernels. That's a little bit higher level, right? Which is bridging GPU and the software, right? In the middle, right? How we develop these efficient operators for neural networks. And then on top of that, we see people who are building efficient systems. So it's like cloud, better communication, better machine learning training systems and training frameworks. And then on top, there is like model improvement. There's like efficient AI memory, efficient knowledge bases, such that you can extract information through reasoning to feed in. So I see it as like a stack of, it's like very typical or very similar to like computer network hierarchy, and efficiency is being injected at every level.
Fascinating conversation, but we're running out of time. I want to thank you for your generosity in sharing your thoughts. Looking forward to seeing you again very soon. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight. Check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on X and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for being with me. Bye for now.